So thank you for introducing me and for the kind introduction, of course. My name is Georg Schattney. I'm here as a representative of Schindler, but I'm going to have some opinion in my personal capacity. So whatever I opinion, that's my personal view from a 25 years journey through something which long time ago was not even called ESG, right? We had climate, we had so-called CSR, we had a governance discussion, and somehow it all fusioned now into ESG. Yeah, maybe to set a bit the stage, opportunity, I don't know about you, this gremium, right, that we all try to sell, it's at least sometimes seems really elusive. And that's why I'm going to focus on the case for circularity, because I think for a lot of at least manufacturing companies, there's really something to win in circularity. And you can achieve real impact on the profit and loss. And in these days, as we've heard, where we are a bit challenged, it's certainly good to have this clear case. Okay, so that's to set the stage. I will shortly introduce Schindler and the role that sustainability in general plays in the way we view our world. Then I'll make a broader case for circularity. We'll have a look at business models, some case studies. We'll have a look a bit specifics of a manufacturer like Schindler, so to say, and also an outlook and a realistic view look at the challenges that you face if you do such a thing in a smaller or larger manufacturing context. So Schindler, I always say we are a bit the nerds of the construction sector, right? So a lot of you probably, if you came through the airport or if you were using the lifts here, you've used elevator products or escalator products. You never think about that. But that's what we are, together with a few other peers, so say Otis, Kone, ThyssenKrupp Elevators, Mitsubishi Electric, Schindler. These are the big players that can really do airports and subway stations and stuff like that. And I already told you about our products, elevators, escalators, moving walks. As you can see, you can earn some nice money with that, or at least generate a decent revenue. The family Schindler, which comes from Switzerland, does that for 150 years now. So quite successful family. We have close to 70,000 employees. We are present in a lot of countries. And presence doesn't mean that there's somebody sitting and selling our products. Presence normally means there's somebody doing the maintenance, whether that's Mumbai, Shanghai, Sao Paulo, or New York. So, that means real presence. What is interesting for our topic today, and probably for a topic of sustainability in itself, is the fact that we do the entire product cycle, including maintenance. So we are close to the product, we keep close to the product is not getting out of our factory and that's that. No, we live a lot with this, and for, let's say, for the elevator industry in general, the maintenance part is also an important part in terms of revenues, because these are recurring revenues. It's so it's an interesting business model. Now we come a bit closer to our topic. What are the mega trends? Where do we move, so to say, right? Our market is urbanization at the end. And we still see a massive influx of people into the big cities. So everybody coming from India or China, but also partially African cities. So whoever has been witnessing that, or Dubai, like just 10 years ago and today, knows what's happening. And you see these skyscrapers, and they need, of course, our elevators or the elevators of our peers. So urbanization drives our business. Civil society is also certainly important. So the refurbishment of houses where older people live that then live in the fourth or fifth floor. You can see that in Frankfurt. You have beautiful old houses, and then you kind of attach an elevator to it so people can still access their apartments. And by the way, even if normally you think of us mostly when you see these big skyscrapers, the residential is an important market for us. Yeah, if you think about Hong Kong, these massive big residential areas, high rises, that's where we sell a lot of our products. Sustainable cities is a driver, service connectivity, of course, and you can see here circular economy. That's where we fit in the construction sector. And as most of you will know, the construction sector is one of the sectors that notoriously underperforms in terms of reducing climate emissions or carbon emissions. So that's the broader context we move in. As corporate view, you know that, and you see it here in all kind of shades, right? We are all driven by regulations. We'll have a look at the specific situation here in Europe in a second. Investors, yeah, this is always a question we can discuss. From what I hear, it's always a bit difficult, right, to really get to this lower interest because you're less carbon intensive, etc. Normally, let's say green loans or green bonds, they are more, let's say, of a signaling instrument, and it's less that you really get so much less interest rate, right? Reputation is important. I think business models are super important, and to have continuously a look what's happening there. And we see some interesting stuff. Employees, I would also rate highly the importance for young people. Consumer purchasing decisions are not so important for us, right? We are in the B2B sector, so that's nothing that I think if you get into an elevator, what you're really interested in is not to think about it, and if you think about it, you want that it's very secure and fast, and that if something happens, people are there very fast. So whether the steel is low emission steel or not, I think is probably, if you're a user of this product, is not so important. Yeah, so Europe still is quite ambitious regarding circularity. So Circular Economy Action Plan, there's a lot going on. We get this digital product passport. We have eco-design guidelines. We have, and I think that's just coming into place now, far-reaching packaging and waste regulation, right to repair, and green claims. I think green claims is going to be tuned down a bit, or part of this omnibus recasting, I'm not so sure. But I think the direction, let's say, despite all that happened when Merz and Macron kind of toned down this package a bit, the direction is still clear what we want. And as Europeans, I think, and what we need, right? We need more resilient supply chains, and we need to get a bit less dependent on others. So I think broadly, this is all going to hit us. And partially, of course, that's for a manufacturing company, that's going to hit your purchasing department. It's going to hit your R&D department if we look at eco-design and stuff like that. So it has really a lot of impact on any manufacturing company, and that includes us. Global view, that's also clear, and that's especially clear for the construction sector, because there we don't only have the CO2 emissions, but I mean, if you look what it means to produce all this concrete, and that partially we even lack the mineral sand that we need to produce all this concrete. So this is massive impact that we have as parts, let's say, of the construction sector, and to build this urban habitat. So there's certainly a lot to be thought, as you might know. Companies like Heidelberg Materials or Holcim, so the big concrete companies are working on this side, and that's very difficult because it's chemical processes that are included. But definitely something needs to happen inside the construction sector, because the construction sector has not decoupled like other sectors. Yeah. And we are part of that. Last but not least, this is the usual World Economic Forum outlook, probably a bit more geopolitical risk in the meantime, but we also know just because geopolitics changes, the challenges of climate change or resource overview, they won't just disappear, especially not from the companies that depend on these supply chains. So circularity is a strong topic, and I will also analyze a bit why for certain manufacturing companies like ours, it's not only P&L, there are other issues involved too, like keeping full control over our spare parts. We don't like that spare parts of our companies are somehow out there in the market, uncontrolled, and they're not maintained by us, and they might get into an elevator and something might happen. So we really want to control that. Business models, case studies. Here's where we get to this fact opportunity. And so there's, if we have a broader look, right? I already said that. So let's say this trend, this regarding the urban habitat is massive, and these mega cities that are being constructed around the world is massive. So we need somehow a way to deal with that in a more sustainable way. Yeah, and as elevator company, we are, we are rather a small part of that. To give you an idea, in a residential building, our, let's say, 5-story residential building, our most efficient elevators will use less energy than the coffee machine out there. Yeah, this coffee machine uses more energy than our elevators. In the bigger buildings, like the cool stuff, you see where my dear colleague comes from, the really cool stuff, even there you would say embodied carbon 3 to 4%, and operational CO2 emissions, same, right? So if you look at the building and somebody tells you, hey, decarbonize the building, probably we are not the hottest topic on the list, but improving or modernizing your elevators is also one of the least expensive things you can do to chop away a bit of carbon, right? This is, for me, always super impressive because it really shows this, the amount of emissions that are caused by our sector, right? Or by our target market. They are so impressive. And in the life cycles, it's mostly basically the operations and maintenance. And then, yes, I still say, okay, if we can chop away a few percent of that 75, that's also good, right? It's still something worth fighting for. Now, what is happening when you go from linear to circular economy? This looks much cleaner than what's really happening. Because what you can say, the linear economy for a manufacturing company is super easy. This is a super easy process, right? So something comes in, so some steel comes in, some doors come in, we build the elevator, we bring it here, or we build it in here normally. So it's like imagine like a big IKEA thing, big, very complicated, steely IKEA thing, but that's what's happening. So we really come here with a big box and start to build these elevators. But the good thing is resources come in, we make something, we put it somewhere, And that's that. That's what happens in our factories, or what used to happen in our factories. Now you start to recycle, and that, of course, starts to make the process much more complex than you see here, right? Because, and we can get a bit deeper into that, what does that really mean? It means that the maintenance technician comes here, looks at the part, and decides whether that part can be repaired or refurbished. So that's the first thing. So, yeah. Put it into, so throw it away, so say no, but give it to somebody to get out the steel or bring it back to our factory. Then you will have a second and third look at it, right? You might still say, yeah, the technician was right, it looked like this, but we cannot do it. So what you get is, instead of this one line or this little recycle thing, what you really get, and we'll see that on another slide, is a process landscape which is maybe 5 times as complex as in the linear world. And it gets complex on all levels, as you can imagine. Like we deal with 40,000 different parts. So now these 40,000 different parts get different things, right? They could be originally manufactured, they could be refurbished, they need maybe a real modernization. You can imagine. So the system suddenly, all these systems, all these processes get a lot more complex. And if you really then want to go into the circular economy, of course, I think recycling is something we can do, and refurbishment we can do as a manufacturing company in your factories. The circular economy itself, of course, that reaches beyond what a single company can do, because you will have just stuff that you feed into other. So maybe there's stuff you can upcycle, maybe there's stuff you downcycle, etc. And there will mostly be there will mostly be some waste, I think, for most people. It's very difficult to completely evade that. We also have circuit boards, etc. So a bit of technology we have. So yeah, this is just to have the beautiful, clean picture. Now, the interesting part is there probably, I don't know how many ways to have a look at this, what you can really do. Yeah. In terms of business models. But it's certainly good to use some of these categories to have a look at your value chains and see what really is interesting for you. So sharing platform, right? That's something that, for example, also the German car industry for some time was really thinking about. Do you want to buy a Mercedes or do you want to buy safe mobility, right? Fair question. Product as a service, there's actually in the construction area a really interesting company. If you want to check that, it's Hilti, the guys that do these high quality power drill, the real good stuff, right? For what you have in your garage, not only what you have in your garage. So with Hilti, we as Schindler, we did a robot that climbs and does all the things right. But that's really interesting because they say, hey, you get the product, but then you control the whole thing, right? If the product is broken, you exchange it, you refurbish that. Then, and that's what we partially do, is extended life cycles, product life extension. Sounds easy at let's say at first glance, but is very complex also in deciding, right? So we still service elevators from the 70s. That's all fine, but of course, a partial modernization is sometimes difficult because the technical standards have changed, and you cannot just change, so say, the door. You have to change the door, the sensoric system. If you have this door with the old elevator cage, that may be misfit, etc. So also there you need a lot of, probably a lot of brain power to do the right thing. But it's something we do, and you probably sometimes really get into these elevators and look when they were built, and you're super surprised because they really last for a long, long time. And technically, yeah, it's true. I think we even have the elevators which are more than 100 years old. Or if you go to Paris, these Haussmann buildings, right, or Barcelona, you still have these old things. And it doesn't mean that they're necessarily super bad. They're just old. Recover value in waste, that's, so to say, not what we are doing, but of course there are models for that too. There's also, I think, extended life cycles. There's also really interesting companies that take old car batteries and then use them as power stations, because just because you don't have the efficiency you need for a car doesn't mean it's still good for other uses, right? And then reform use of resources. That's also what we are working on. So circular supply chain. We use steel a lot. We also in these moving walks you have these aluminium steps. So of course we try to push our suppliers that we have more recycled or secondary steel, secondary aluminium. You can get to quite high percentages there without having to compromise on quality or stuff like that. So that's a bit, let's say, probably there's other categorizations that are interesting, but I always find this good just to have a basic idea what can be done. Here's some just, I mean, you know, just getting into startup camps that have gotten prizes. There's a lot going on, and whether it's, for example, I love this circular mattresses for hospitality. Yeah, cool. I mean, if you think about all these big hotel chains, that's great. Changing materials, that's great. Life extension for batteries, we were just discussing that. So I think there's really a lot going on in this circular world, and the good thing is it's how to say, it's very concrete, right? So whether you deal in batteries, you always deal with material flows, so you have some asset somehow there in the game. It's not virtual, it's very concrete. But what you have to see is, so if we talk only about the small thing of repair or whatever, for manufacturing companies, as I've just shown you, it really means different processes, but also it means that if you think about a production line, where before you had one production line, you now need a different line, which is the repair and refurbishment line, and it's a different way of doing that. So you really go into the factory and you build a new line for this. So yeah, we are cool, right? If you look at that, I love it. No, we are really in all of these buildings, and we have a long journey, and maybe that's interesting. I mean, just to think about what have we done in our sector, right? And stuff that is not very visible for you, like in the machine room, less elevator, this regeneration of energy. These things are changing a lot. You see our stuff we do with Hilti, this Schindler Rise. That's the robo, and so it's super interesting how the energy efficiency of elevators has been improved. There's sometimes these two elevators, which mean in these high rises, which mean that as an architect you build less of these shafts. And that has a massive impact, right, on embodied carbon. So there's a lot we've done that how to say, that architects really love. Some stuff that architects love are not so good for so say security, because as you can imagine, if you don't have that extra room on the top, that extra room is also that if the elevator goes up with a service technician on it, this service technician has a relatively good chance to survive. So what I only want to say, it's not so, some stuff looks good from the outside, but as a technician and then on an elevator, you say, maybe I still like this, right? Even if it costs a bit more. So we have, I think, pretty good ratings. Not I think, I know pretty good ratings on EcoVadis, CDP. We have the most ambitious long-term goal in SBTI of our peers with the 2040 net zero carbon goal, and stuff like that. So yeah, we see the platinum rating here. So we are really active. with all of that. And this is our roadmap, or this is how we structure it for us. As you can see, circularity is at the core, but as I said, we have a look at the supply chain, we work with the suppliers, we try to get more recycled material there. We work a lot on energy efficiency of products, but there you also reach a theoretical optimum, right, at a certain point. And circularity for us, for a number of reasons, is really one of the core topics. And the interesting part is, first of all, it has a direct impact on the P&L. So we save money. Secondly, as I told you, if you want to have lifetime extension, that means you still need spare parts, right? Because everything that moves gets used up. So what we really can do by refurbishing parts is extending lifetimes. It's improving the availability of certain parts that, for example, suppliers don't want to produce anymore, up to the fact that we have colleagues that are now getting into 3D printing, additive manufacturing. So there's a lot we can do in this regard. And this, so to say, safety of supply chain and drying out or let's say, limiting any kind of secondary markets or unauthorized use of our products and is very important for us, right? Because there are a lot of people that are really smart and, just getting your grip on that. I think you have the same issue in the airline industry or in the plane manufacturing industry as Airbus and Boeing. You want to make sure that nobody just puts something where it's Boeing written on it unauthorized in a plane. Here closer look at our scopes, but it also shows you. So the biggest part is for us the scope 3 category 11 use of products. That's you basically getting in the elevator and pushing a button. That's what you see there. The purchased goods, that's where you with circularity you have the impact. Of course, if you engage with the value chain. So for us, it's roughly 70% of our footprint is the use of our products, 28.5% is purchasing the goods, and all the rest is 1.5%. And that's a pretty consistent picture for a lot of manufacturing companies. Yeah. Net zero, we are ambitious. And I think 2030, we have minus 50% scope 1, scope 2, minus 42% scope 3. We are on a good way. So I think we can be very ambitious there. But of course, the issue is if you go more ambitious than Paris Agreement with use of sold goods, one main factor is the decarbonization of energy nets. So we cannot change the energy mix of Germany, but it will be accounted in our scope 3 category 11 calculation. Okay, and now here we have, I was teasing you a bit, trying to make you interested in that. And this is a very, very simple depiction of what happens in your IT systems, what your technicians, and in our case, that means these 70,000 people, a lot of them are field technicians in the field that have apps. So this will happen, right? Once you get into a circular flow, that you have all of these different possibilities. And that's happening. So say in the back office, you need warehouses, you need a good system to distribute this. So it's super interesting. It's very positive. But for a manufacturing company, that also means really that's a pretty massive project in all dimensions. Yeah. Outlook, because we're already a bit over time. There's a lot interesting happening. I think the most interesting part is maybe really seeing why, let's say, what is always keeping us from having all this success that we hope to have and saving all the CO2 that we want to save, right? And in general, it's just the operational challenges. Profitability is an issue. As I told you, with circularity, you're much better. Your CEO will like you, especially treasury and these people, keeping liquidity in the company, etc., etc. But it's also a cultural change, right? So field technicians need to know, hey, I sent that back instead of throwing it away. And to make them send it back, you need to talk with DHL, who are here, I think, today, and give them a nice code, etc. So you need to take care. You need to take, for us to make circularity work means we need to really engage 70,000 people in 100 countries. And we have to make it easy for them to do this. Yeah, so I think a lot of interesting parts to discuss if you really want to reap the benefits. We should do that, of course, right? If we don't take up this fight, who will? Probably our controllers won't go there by themselves because it's so great. So we need to make it work. But a big, so say, for me, what I really think is circularity. If in these days you search something that, let's say, where you can have a lot of fun and really, which can you sell well to your top management, it's a great topic. And yeah, I'm happy to go more into detail afterwards. Yep. Thank you.